Jermaine. Just Jermaine. Just Jermaine. Just Jermaine. Just Jermaine. Just Jermaine. Just Jermaine.
Hey everybody, I want to welcome to the fourth episode of Just Jermaine podcast, and today we have a special guest, Jason Richmond. And those that don't know who he is, let me give you a little brief synopsis on him, just a little small bit. He mixed for Regina Belle, Shirley Caesar, The Foreign Exchange. I can keep going. It'll take me 2 days to get through the full list of how many people he done mixed, produced, and mastered. But the overall best one was for Kate McGarry. She was Grammy nominated for Best Jazz Vocal Album, and that was Jason's mix. And if I'm not mistaken, Jason, you recorded that as well, right?
I actually recorded that. I didn't actually mix that record, man.
Okay.
So, I'm blanking on the individual who mixed it, but I recorded it, yeah. So
to be the recording engineer on a Grammy-nominated album, how does that feel? Let's let the people, the listeners, know how it feels to be a Grammy-nominated engineer.
It kind of feels the same, man, as it felt the day before, man. You sort of strive for this, I guess, when you're doing it, but then you get these things, and it's like Grammy nominated. I think if she had won, we would have gotten more excited, But I feel really happy for Kate and Keith and Gary and those that were involved in that record, Keith Gaines and who really produced that record, and Kate McGarry. But, she's an amazing vocalist, and we're actually working on another one now.
Hopefully that one will get it.
Yeah. So, that was Kate's second Grammy nomination. She won one several years ago for another record, I believe, like 2010 or something.
Oh, wow.
Like that. That was her second nomination, which, I was happy to be involved in it for sure,
That's her second nomination, so that means three's a charm.
Yeah, that's exactly it, man.
Three's a charm.
Don't count it on it.
So
this next one, it's good too.
So as soon as you get that paper in the mail, and you get that little trophy in the mail, as soon as you get it, just take a picture of it and just text it right to me.
Will do, man. Will do, dude.
'Cause that is definitely one of my main goals, to be able to be a part of a Grammy-winning album. That is definitely one of my goals.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I mean, it's nice that it's really nice when you put a lot of energy into a record and it gets recognized by a larger
right
crowd, and that it's like nothing gets a higher recognition than the Grammys, So anytime you're a part of something like that, it's great, man. It feels really good,
Yeah, I bet it does. But see, the thing is, people look at the credits and they be like, okay, he was part of that album. He did, he mixed it, he recorded, or he produced it, whatever your credits may be to a certain album. But once it gets the awards, that's what everybody see. But what they don't see is the process, the things that we go through inside of the studio, the long hours it takes mixing a record. It could take a whole entire day recording a record. Depends on what the record is and what the producer's looking for and the artist is looking for. So if you can tell us one of your horror stories about when you was in the studio, let the people know the inside job, because this is what people don't know and what they don't see.
Yeah, man. Well, I mean, I don't want to say that anything's a horror story, man. They all have their challenges, so no matter what side you're on, and how involved you are in any given project, there's always going to be, it's the artist project, whether you're the producer, the engineer, or the mix engineer, or you're all three of those things, it's like, it's not your project, you might have a vision for what this is supposed to be,
right?
But it's not yours, it's theirs, and so it's your job to fulfill that vision. And And that's what you have to do. I guess I have to be somewhat, careful in what I say and about his, so maybe I'll just won't name names to anything.
Right.
But I think every project has its challenges, and a lot of things, when you're, say, just the engineer side of it, you're not producing it and that sort of thing. A lot of times there's a outside producer and there's the artist, and your job as the engineer is to sort of juggle those two things and figure out how to give the producer what they want and figure out how to give the artist what they want. And I recently finished a record where it was very clear to me that the producer and the artist really just didn't see eye to eye.
Right.
And they chose to work together for a particular reason, and it just wasn't the right match. They were both extremely talented at what they do, but there has to be a match. There has to be a fit there. Everyone has to sort of ultimately have a somewhat of a similar goal. I think it's good for a producer to push an artist, push a producer, and in turn, hopefully that pushes the engineer and the mixer to do something, more creative than what you would do on your own.
Right.
But sometimes it's the vision, the ultimate vision of what this record's supposed to be, are two different things. And then as the mix engineer and the engineer, which I was on this project, you have to try to figure out, like, well, this is this is a balancing act, like I give I have a list of notes from the producer on my mixes. I have a list of notes from the artist on their mixes, and they're completely asking me to do the complete opposite thing,
Right.
So then you sort of find your way and you wiggle your way into the middle. On this particular project, we went back and forth literally for months on the mixes.
Right.
Till finally, the artist said, I'm the artist, I'm in charge, and this is how the mixes are going to go, And then, I went and mixed the record like that, and within a day, he's ecstatic and happy, and it's off to mastering, and it's over. So you run into these things where, you have to negotiate them, you have to find ways to make everybody happy, and at the end of the day, not everybody's always going to be happy, and it might not work out,
Right.
But you as the engineer just have to sort of stay neutral and do the best job that you can to try to find a way through that, that maze, and hope that you sort of come out with a job still.
To me, that is definitely one of the hardest things to do, especially when the producer and the artist is on two different pages, two different mindsets, and they're not agreeing to what they want on the actual track. And that's why, if I'm not mistaken, that's why a lot of albums get pushed back so much and they can't get anything done because of that. The artist sees one thing and they got a whole nother complete vision from what the producer has. But my advice to an artist would be, make sure you get with a producer where y'all gel. You got to gel with each other. Because
that's exactly it. And, the thing to recognize is that there's some producers that I've worked with who I think really understand how to sort of go with the artist. They're there to bring out whatever the best is an artist, and then they push them in whatever direction it is that they want to go to make the best record in that direction. Where there's other producers who have their own vision, and there's nothing wrong with either one of these things. It's just that you have to be, they have to be aligned, So if you run into more problems when the producer has a very clear vision of what they want, and the artist feels differently, So it can be extremely challenging. But making records in general are really challenging, because the moment you get somebody in a recording studio, that's the most vulnerable place they're ever going to be.
Right.
It's like they're hearing back themselves, their art, everything they put into it, sometimes for the first time. Definitely those songs for the first time.
Right.
And they're having to process that by hearing it that way. And so that's really the trick. And that's, kind of our job is to figure out how to negotiate all the different people involved in these things so that things come out sounding the best they can.
I agree. Because I know I had some situations where, man, it got kind of ugly with a track where the producer was hearing one thing. Now, I'm going to tell you, he brought in some live musicians. Some of the musicians understood audio, some of them didn't. Yep. So when you try to tell the ones that don't understand audio, you try to give them pointers on mic placement. And next thing you know, they don't move the mic back to where they wanted it. Man, that is like one of the, especially on drums.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and I guess where I'm fortunate is that I work with, for the most part, I work mainly with live musicians, and most of the time, they're on a professional level, and that they trust me to do my job, and I trust them to do their job. We kind of stay out of each other's way. And I guess early on, I probably had some experiences like that. I can't say that happens a lot, particularly in terms of mic choice or mic placement. I mean, people will say to me, "Oh, I really like such and such mic rather than such and such," and I was like, "Well, try this. If you don't like it, we'll switch it."
Right.
And then, most of the time they like it, so it's, but everyone here is different too, so sometimes, particularly working with an artist for the first time or a producer, you have to sort of figure out what their sense is, for sound, like what is it that they like to hear and how do they describe it and where's the terminology they use and all that sort of thing, because that changes quite a bit too, and understanding those different avenues.
Right. Especially when I mic up a drummer, those are like some of the main questions that I always ask. I watch them play. Once they set up their kit, I always tell them to play so I can see where their hits are. And I usually set up mics based on where they're hitting at, so I can, and then I can get the best punch out of certain parts. And then also depends, like some people want their toms to sound high end, some want them tucked inside of the mix. So I will make those adjustments based on where their hits are. If their hit is swaying to the right and they want it to be more high end, then of course I'll move the mic to the right side of that to the shell. And if they want it more tucked, then I move it to the left side, to the other side of the shell, so it doesn't get the smack as much, but it still got the tom tone. And then I also had an interview with a drummer, and that was one of the main things that we talked about was tuning. Is making sure that the drums are tuned according to the room.
Yeah, it's so important, I mean, from the engineer side, it's like we can't really make a bad drum set, sound good.
Right.
We can ruin a nice sounding drum set for sure, but it's really hard to make something that doesn't sound great sound really great. It's like it's not particularly not just with drums, but any sort of instrument, you want it to sound great, when you're standing there listening to it, and then you can figure out how you're gonna, mic it up, or depending on what sort of sound you're going for,
One thing that I despise about working as being an engineer, that I absolutely do not like this. I enjoy what I do, been doing it for a very long time. And I love miking. I love making things sound better and making it come together. As an engineer, I love that. But the one thing that I absolutely hate, after you done put in all of that work, you have that one producer or that one artist that be like, okay, I'm going to pay you at the end of the week. And end of the week becomes 3 weeks. I
mean, that's something we all deal with. I mean, I think anybody within any sort of freelance career probably deals with that. I mean, my method generally is, I don't deliver, full high-res mixes, until I get paid, So, there's an incentive on their part. If they want to release the record, they're going to have to pay me. So, but, we all go through that. I can say that I've never not been paid, So, I think it seems like everyone has some horrible story where they just never got paid. And I've never had that experience. So,
I definitely had that experience one time where the guy didn't pay me, and I did not send him the wave file. And I made sure I sent him a low res MP3 for him to listen to. So, and then also he thought I was going to send him a performance track. And I'm like, no, I'm not sending it. I'm like, when I see this notification come across my phone saying I got money, then I send you the performance track, I send you the WAV file, and I send you the high res MP3.
That's it, man. That's how you have to play the game, man. Once again, man, I've been lucky that like most of my clientele are professionals who and so it's very rare that I run into those issues.
Right.
I'm not saying I don't wait sometimes for a while. I do, but I know I'm going to get it. It's never. Oh, I might just get totally stiffed on this.
Right.
So, I think the problem is mainly if you're doing this full time, and you need to expect a certain amount of money when you don't get paid for 3 weeks, or the project might just not. It's like. A lot of times what I do is take 50% up before I start a mix, and then I expect the other 50% when I finish the mix. But sometimes the mixes might take 6 months to finish because of various logistical things that happen.
Right.
So that's money that I'm not going to get for 6 months. While I'm waiting for everybody to approve the mixes. Which could be a band and a producer and a manager and a label and all these other things that have to come through before I see that other 50%. So it's hard to know what to expect on any given month, in terms of being able to survive, and I can only assume that everybody in the freelance world kind of goes through that, unless and as an engineer, unless you work for a studio full time or have some other side gig, that's more steady, then you sort of have that issue. So,
right, because I know at one point you were working in a studio. You was like the studio manager there, and you went into the freelancing. So, for those, what kind of advice could you give to an upcoming engineer that would be thinking about working for an actual studio?
Just the industry in itself is challenging right now. So, I was lucky to get a job working for a studio, but those jobs are really hard to come by. And I just kind of happened to be at the right place at the right time. And I was kind of early on trying to kind of get a foothold, in the scene and sort of do all that. And it was really good for me, because I had a low but steady paycheck. And was able to sort of, work on my craft, that it's just, there's so little of that you sort of, you can go out and get yourself an internship. And the younger you do it, obviously the easier it is to do. The older you get, you have more commitments, you have family, you got kids, you got all these other things that sort of make it harder to do those things. But I would say for most people, you kind of got to start at the internship level and hope that you get one. They're not easy to get. So, the thing because I do a fair amount of teaching as well, which becomes like my side thing, to do. And what I tell all my students is just get out there and just make records, find bands, find artists and work with them. Make records. If you start doing good work, your name's going to get out. And you'll start to be able to make some headway in the industry. I think that's all you really can do. I don't think there's a really clear pathway. And it is hard. It's hard. It's just not. There's a lot of competition, and a lot of the big studios aren't around anymore. The ones that still exist are run by the engineer.
Now that you brought up teaching, I was fortunate enough to be in some of your classes. I know one particular that I know we had a lot of fun in. I couldn't stand the class at all. But it's very valuable to learn that information, because I remember what I told you that day. And I was dead serious, and you laughed at me when I said it. Because I said I hated your class with a passion.
I remember that. Man. But I'm fighting, I don't remember what class that was, man.
It was theory.
Oh, theory. Okay. All right. That's right, man. I was teaching music theory. All right. Gotcha,
it was music theory. Because when I came to the school, let me tell you why I said it. Because when I came to the school, I wasn't coming to learn music. I was actually coming to learn mixing and mastering, dig into the different types of hardware and what is for. I want to learn more about compression, learn more about EQs. And we get in there and you start talking about the circle of fifths, and I felt lost. I was like, what is this? I'm like, I'm not in band. I'm not in band. I'm not trying to be a beat maker. I'm not trying to play instruments. Why am I learning the circle of fifths? But
yeah, man.
But it was very valuable. That information was so valuable, especially when I get beats now. And like when a producer or a beat maker send me the music, and then it'd be another week or two before the artist actually comes in to sing the record. Most people today, they want to sing with auto-tune. And of course with auto-tune, you got to put it in the right key. That's what your class taught me to listen to. It taught me to listen to what key a song is in so I can recognize when the singer is not singing correctly. But I know we got tools out there that recognizes it now. They got apps that can tell you what the key the song is in. Everything is so much easier now. But when I was coming up and going through it, it wasn't that easy. So I had to learn it the hard way.
I mean, I get it, man. It wasn't what you wanted to do. I remember, man. And nobody wanted to do it, man. I mean, it was not something anybody was interested in. Everybody wanted to make records, and they were like, "Why are we learning music theory?" Right. You know, I still think it's important, man. I don't know how I would do what I do without having an ear for what's going on musically. You know, to be able, like you said, man. Like, you know, if I've got to tune a vocal, it's like I should have a pretty good idea which note I'm, shooting for, you know?
Right, because most people today, they don't care about what note is in. They just leave it at default, which is C, and they throw some auto-tune and they turn it up, and they say, we're going with that. I'm like, okay, but when you go into auto-tune, you do know there are some bad notes in there that you got to remove. But a lot of people don't do it that way.
That's what I'm saying. It's important. That stuff is really important, man, you know? Because, particularly now, like a lot of singers don't sing that well, and they need that help, and so you need to be able to help them effectively,
Yeah, I get it, because I hear a lot of live performances, and I'd be like, well, I don't know how they became a millionaire, but I guess their shows must be really lit, because that voice isn't. It's got to be it's got to be something else going on. Because
man,
it is bad. Like, it is getting really, really bad to the point where I'm getting to the point now where I'm starting to want to record more live music. The more and more I want to record live, the more and more somebody send me something digital.
Yeah.
Everything is digital.
I know, man. I mean, I occasionally people send me I'll do a hip hop thing, or where everything's just basically done in Reason or Logic or Fruity Loops, and
right.
I don't know, man. It leaves a little bit to it. Just it's hard to make it really sound inspiring, And the stuff that's really good is really good, but there's so much of it, and most of it's just not as good,
But that's the wave that we on now. That's the wave we on. So to keep those checks coming in, you got to ride that wave.
Yep, exactly. So anyway, man, that's I think that's one of the sort of things about sort of modern music production is dealing with all these things like tuning and timelining and fixing things in a way that really wasn't really part of making music, in the 80s, So
right.
It's just it's a different thing for sure now.
And let me ask you this: what are some of your go-to external pieces that you just it's almost a must on every record
in terms of
hardware?
hardware for like mixing or tracking or?
Well, tell me what your go-to pieces are for tracking, then tell me what they are for mixing.
Sure. Well, I mean, I have a lot of stuff that I use these days, but I tend in tracking. I tend to use a lot of ribbon microphones. I really love the Royer 122V, which is their tube ribbon mic, which I think just sounds really amazing. I use that on a lot of things. I've got some UTA undertone audio preamps, which I just think are amazing sounding and really flexible. So within tracking, stuff like that, but I like a lot of the same things a lot of people like, Norman mics and that sort of stuff.
Right.
In tracking, I'm sort of open to use a lot of kind of whatever's in whatever studio. I do most of my tracking at a whole variety of studios. So I'm kind of there's a few things that I might bring with me, like my Royer or my Bronner microphone or something like that. But a lot of times I'm using whatever the studio has, which is an API console or a Neve console or whatever it might be.
Right.
And there's certain things I like more than other things. Mixing, I do, that all happens in my space. So, I've got a little, more flexibility. I've got a hybrid system, where I do a lot of mixing kind of in the box, but then everything gets summed out through a summing mixer and then hits various pieces of outboard gear and goes back and gets printed in Pro Tools that way. So with the hybrid system, I sort of use a lot of the same gear. It seems like I kind of switch key pieces out depending on the style of music or whatnot. But I really like the I've got a retro EQ, which I really love. It's a retro tube EQ, very similar to a Pultec. Sounds amazing. I would love a couple more of them. I've got a DW Fern compressor, which is sort of sits most of the time on my master bus. It's a really just an amazing sounding compressor. And I also have a Obsidian. It's the Dramastic Audio Obsidian, which is kind of an SSL style compressor, and that sometimes will go on my master as well. Generally not both of them, but I'd switch, one or the other. And then, I have a Crane Song Ibis, which is a pretty nice EQ. A lot of times that goes on my drum bus. And some, various other things, I kind of use from time to time. And so, and then, a lot of everything else kind of comes, real sort of fine tuning, reverbs. Most of that stuff I just do in the box. I think, I think a lot of the plugins sound really great now. They've come a long way from what they used to be. So I sort of found this hybrid system, which I think works really well, where I can get some analog sound happening, but I can recall things pretty easily. So I guess like I was saying, you end up mixing a record over months, sometimes 6 months to a year sometimes, and you got to go back and you got to recall the mixes. So I really needed to get to a point where I could really kind of get the sounds I was looking for, but quickly recall things. So I wasn't, chasing my tail trying to get the mix back to where I wanted it. I need to get back quick, So this has been working great. Especially I got my new room set up, several months ago, and I've got everything kind of dialed in now. It sounds great, man. I'm able to sort of move through things really fast and switch setups if I need to, and change things, and quickly get a revision for something I worked on, weeks ago, back up and sounding the same way. So gives me the best of both worlds, the analog world and, as if I was fully in the box, but I'm not. So I get sort of some extra juice, from all the analog gear. And that stuff it changes the mix quite dramatically, I would say. It's not really subtle, like my mix, once I get things kind of laid out through my summing mixer and through the various pieces of gear, the mix starts to come together pretty fast after that, just because the gear is doing a lot of kind of heavy lifting. So
right. Because I know in my studio, my favorite piece is this distressor. I love it.
Yeah, distressors are great.
Because that day I came to you and I said I was looking for a compressor. And
Oh yeah.
I came to you and I was like, I need a great sounding compressor. And then that's when you were like, well, you need to go get the distressor because it's going to also help you with the vocals, but it's going to help you on every single thing that you do. And I use it on everything. I love it. It's the best piece that I have inside of my studio.
Yeah, I got to say, they're great. And, I'd say most every studio I work at has a couple of them, and they get used all the time in tracking. I don't know why I don't own one. I think I need to own two of them. I'm not sure why I don't. I think that probably has to change soon.
See, once you win that Grammy, then we could go ahead and make that phone call over to Imperial Labs.
Exactly. That's what it'll take, right? Yeah.
That's exactly what it's going to take. Once you win that Grammy, you go ahead and tell Imperial Labs, hey, look, guess what? I'm a Grammy Award-winning engineer. I need some equipment. You have a couple boxes on your doorstep the next day.
Yeah, exactly, man. I think part of it, too, is like, a lot of the genres I'm working in, which might be like jazz or bluegrass or, folk music and stuff like that, they're still sort of like niche genres, So like they're not, it's like when you get into sort of like hip-hop records and R&B records, and pop records, where it's like these things are so huge. Like if you win a Grammy in those fields, like you're huge. You're kind of like stardom,
Right.
In my field, it's kind of like it's still like, it's cool. It's a great acknowledgement, but like I don't know. I don't know how much it massively changes your sort of career outlook or not.
It's just
it may.
The other genres, they get a little bit more recognition because they own every single radio station. Look at Lil Nas X when he came out with Old Town Road and Billy Ray Cyrus jumped on it. So that was in the hip hop world, but now since Billy Ray Cyrus got on it, the country world started touching it. So it all just depends.
That's it, man. It does. It depends. There's just and some things just they. It's certainly not about better music or there's just, there's popular music and there's some that's just like, they're just not selling as much,
Right.
Like some things sell a lot and some things don't, so, it is what it is right there, it's like, that's kind of always going to be that way. I don't think that's going to change much,
Yeah, because
even records or to sell again,
Because of Michael Jackson, pop music sells more than anything.
It's still what?
Because of Michael Jackson, pop music sells more than any other genre.
Yeah, very possibly, man. It's just partly, I think it's just the nature of, there's a hook and it's got a killing beat and like it just sort of drives people, and so people are more inclined to listen to that than something that might be softer or sort of tucked in the back, and just there might be a little more nuance that it's just not going to sort of reach a huge swath of people,
Right.
And that's that's just the way it is.
Well, Jason, I want to say thank you, and I really, really appreciate you being on my podcast today.
Yeah, man. Thanks for asking me.
And if you want to reach out to Jason, just go to www.jasonrichmondsound.com. Again, that is www.jasonrichmondsound.com. And all the artists and producers, engineers, everybody that's listening, I really hope that you gained a lot from this podcast today, so you can know that as an artist and as a producer, you guys have to gel together and come together to make the life of the engineer 10 times easier, because it's that much harder on the engineer when the artist and producer are on two different pages and they want two different mixes to go on. So with that being said, I really do appreciate everybody for listening. Until the next time, keep your ears open, keep your eyes closed, and a lot of y'all won't understand it, but the true ones do. Peace.